quick little one here today, mostly because this guitar is too pretty not to share. It really is one of the nicest parlor guitars, vintage ones, that I've seen in a very long time. This is a Regal, one of their upper end models. We've seen some Regals in the past, but this one is, well, it's head and shoulders above the competition. It's really most impressive. It looks right, looks the part, has this excellent decorative scheme going on, and this lovely, exuberant pickguard. I mean, look at this thing. They really don't do them like that anymore. The Regal story begins in the late 1890s, 1896. It was one of a trio of brands started by a fellow named Emil Wolschner in Indianapolis, Indiana, of all places. Unfortunately, he passed away soon after starting his factory. He was there for 4 years. In 1904, Lyon and Healy came a-calling, and they said, well, that's a great name, thank you very much, we'll take that name. So they bought it, and they moved the production to Chicago. Regal eventually got sectioned off into its own independent company in 1924, and they were heavily involved in the early stages of the resonator guitar concept. They made bodies for both National and Dobro, and National after Dobro had purchased National. Following World War II, production slowed. They finally stopped in the early 1950s. Harmony picked up the rights to the name, and the company basically died. It was revitalized. There is a Regal brand now, owned by Saga, which came about, I think, about 20 years ago. It doesn't have a direct line to the original company. So this is pretty high quality for Regal's early flat top production. They made a lot of really inexpensive catalog guitars too that are here and there. This one's great. It's so light, it's almost unbelievable. Like, it feels, my scale doesn't have a battery right now, but it's got to be 2 pounds. There's nothing to it. The owner has narrowed the date of production down to 1929, based mostly on the pickguard design, but a few other things too. It's just, you can feel it. There's something about this guitar. The woods used in the body are very nice. The neck is still poplar, but what you're going to do. That's a really nice headstock design too. The fit and finish are good. This is, of course, another lefty conversion. Someone in the past made this lefty nut, but the saddle configuration isn't the best. These things, just as a matter of course, just don't have enough compensation for their usual right-handed stringing. They're practically straight. There's very little angle to the saddle. In this case, of course, it's going backwards. What little angle is there? And the owner notices that it doesn't really intonate all that well. Also, there's a bit of a buzzy thing happening on the D string. A sitar effect. So we are going to plug and recut the saddle slot. There's a label. The saddle height on this is very good. They didn't attempt to make a through saddle though. And this guitar shows evidence of old school neck resetting technique, where they seem to have cut through at the 12th fret, remove the fingerboard extension to get access to the dovetail. Once again, it's better to do this cut up here or here rather than right there, because this thing folds right on that joint. There's nothing under it. So, but it's holding together and it's playing okay. For people who care about such things, the frets are incredibly narrow, only 52 thousandths wide, which is like 30 thousandths less than standard wire these days, and no side dots on either side. The player would like some, so I'm going to pop those in. Mark them, drill them, glue them, snip them, flush them. Is this the original bridge? I don't know. There's some evidence of work done around it, so either it came up or it was replaced. There's some funny things going on with the bridge pad below it as well. This chunk of maple seems to have been inlaid into the front of the transverse brace as a bridge pad, which is a pretty remarkable feat if you think about it. Also, there seems to be a little piece behind the bridge pad now too. Don't think that's original. And there is a cleat in the front there with the rather rough edge, which is supporting a fingerboard crack. I'm going to fill the old saddle slot with a piece of ebony, even though the bridge is made from some other wood disguised to resemble it. I've got the real deal here in my scrap pile, so might as well put it to work. Carefully trimming it to fit. I'll get that glued in and clamped up. The fingerboards on these are essentially flat, like a classical guitar. I'm shaping the saddle with a tiny hint of radius though. It's like a 30-inch radius. And a gentle slope towards the treble side. I marked the height from the previous saddle and added a little bit of extra for some working room. When I'm cutting this bone, I don't use a jeweler's saw for metal. This is actually a wood cutting number 3 scroll saw blade. It's less delicate than the stuff we use for pearl, and it hogs away a lot more material. Just for the record, this is another one of those dyed roasted maple fingerboards that we see a lot online in Heelys in the teens and 20s. And yeah, it's all cracked up too. Removing this board would be difficult. I'll plane off the excess. When marking out the scale length on a left-handed guitar, it's important to remember that you're working on a left-handed guitar. I set up my saddle routing jig to cut along the compensation line. This cut's about 3 millimeters deep, just under 1/8 of an inch. As this is a through saddle, the slot extends right out through the wings of the bridge. I'll paint on some India ink to restore the black. Alright, I think we're going to call this one here. I've got the strings on for the setup here. It still needs to come down about a 1/64 of an inch, but we're pretty darn close. I also need to sculpt the ends of the saddle so that they blend in with the profile of the wings. And I have a coat of shellac on the bridge, which needs to harden up a little bit more before I sand and buff that out a bit and unify the texture and the color. But yeah, you know, I like this guitar.